Hello, and welcome back to the Audible Finish, where we discuss the week gone by in the world of wrestling. I'm your host, Dimitri Kalos, and alongside me, as always, is my esteemed co-host, Thanasu. Welcome back, Thanasu.
Salutations and peace. So good to be on the show.
In today's episode, we review the developments in the King and Queen of the Ring tournaments, as well as the setup of Cody Rhodes versus Logan Paul in a winner-takes-all match. We'll discuss that and more very soon before finishing this week's episode by having a King of the Ring themed quiz. So be sure to get your notepads out, Thanasif, to take notes. If you are enjoying the podcast and have a moment, please like, share, and subscribe. And if there is a certain topic that interests you more than the other, please feel free to jump ahead to it using the timestamps in the description below. On that note, Thanasi, let's dive right into it and let's go right to the beginning from SmackDown. So, do you want to take us through your thoughts on the opening confrontation that we had with Cody Rhodes and Logan Paul, which has seemingly set up a title versus title match at King and Queen of the Ring? What are your thoughts on that and the segment that was on SmackDown?
I'm going to be brutally candid. When I saw that Nick Aldis was about to announce the number one contender, I was super keen. I was like, oh, this is nice. We're going to go straight into it. And then I heard the music and I saw Logan Paul coming out, and I was like, oh, of course. But you know what? If they're going to put him in the pay-per-view main event for the heavyweight championship of the world, at least it's in Saudi Arabia, glorified house show. Just get it out of the way, something that we don't really have to stress about all that much as far as a prestigious pay-per-view. That being said, the idea of it being a winner take all for me seems as if they've booked themselves into a corner, because if Logan Paul wins, it's essentially the end of the world. If there is some kind of a screwy finish, then that's a really disappointing way to do it. And I don't think the Triple H era is about screwy finishes. And then if Cody wins, it means he becomes a dual champion. Now, granted, it would complete his Grand Slam. That's pretty good, right? Good for him on that front. But he doesn't need the US title. It would just be overkill. And the defeat of Logan Paul really should be going to someone to get elevation. And I'm thinking of LA elevation, if that makes sense. Should be going to LA Knight 100%. And I mean, LA Knight's not even in the King of the Ring tournament anymore, I don't think, or at least we're not envisioning that he's going to be winning it. So he doesn't even get a title match on the pay-per-view. I'm a little bit disappointed. And the vibes that I was getting was, to be frank, a little bit John Cena. Like, we don't need to go so hard and all in on Cody right now when he's in honeymoon mode. Like, God, like, let's extend it. Let's actually have him as an enjoyable baby face before we start to rub it on too thick. But yeah, that's my little mini rant. Did you have opinions on the booking here?
For the most part, I agree with you on this. I don't think it's necessary. And for me in wrestling, when something doesn't seem like it's necessary, I always have a bit more trepidation with it. In this particular case, I think it's a smart move in the sense Logan Paul is a good, uh, quick feud for Cody to have ahead of whatever other matches they set up for him. But I'm not a big fan of him potentially winning the US title as well. I accept that it's the one accolade that he has left really to achieve now, and that in WWE they like this thing with like completionism for their stars, but I just don't believe it's the right call because eventually Cody needs to then lose that title, and depending on who they give it to, whoever it goes to, it will necessitate a loss. And I think with him, the first time he loses, it'd be far more impactful if it was the WWE Championship that he loses and not the United States. So that's just my opinion on that.
Can I pose this hypothetical? I don't think it's ideal. I think it's second best, but just putting it out there. Suppose he does get it, he does win both, and he vacates the US title, and then they go into a tournament for the US championship. maybe a culmination at SummerSlam or something like that. And that's where LA Knight gets his big moment.
Potentially, but I'm not a big fan of vacating titles. I feel like the point of winning it is to say you are the best of whatever division or you are that champion.
Or that
And
you've
then
defeated the best, and that makes you the new best.
and then you then call for newcomers to come and challenge you for that. So I'm not a big fan of the vacating titles. So I get what you're trying to do. It's to protect everyone involved, and essentially it feels like this is just a way to get the title off of Logan Paul. Which I'm very curious as to why they decided this was the proper approach, if that is what happens. For all we know, what you said before is that they might both come out of this unscathed, or potentially there'll be a change of the stipulation. There's still a bit of time, so we don't exactly know, but it does seem like it's going to be a winner takes all the gold type match. In that scenario, it has to be Cody, doesn't it? We can't have a world where Logan Paul is the WWE champion this early
Especially
into his career.
especially Logan Paul defeating Cody Rhodes to become world champion, and in Saudi Arabia, no less. It's it's depressing to think about, and that's why it's just so unbelievable.
Well, changing gears a little bit, I wanted to discuss the opening round matches that we had of the King and Queen of the Ring tournaments from SmackDown. Obviously, we had a number of stars progress because it's early on, but amongst them we have Carmelo Hayes, Randy Orton who beat AJ Styles, Tama Tonga who beat Angelo Dawkins, and I believe LA Knight did advance to the next round in a dark match or something that wasn't broadcast.
Was that a
Uh,
house show?
I think yes, that's correct. And then on the women's side, we had Nia Jax beat Naomi. We had Jade Cargill beat Piper Niven. Bianca Belair beat Candice LeRae. And I think Tiffany Stratton also progressed via house show victory. So lots of matches happening here. What were your thoughts on the matches that we saw from SmackDown? Because, and I want to quickly mention as well, this particular SmackDown had a lot more matches than what is normal for a SmackDown. So what were your thoughts on it?
Likewise with last week's Raw, not the one we're going to talk about now, but that was the case with last week's Raw, and I think I quite enjoy that as a wrestling fan. Like, you know, we watch wrestling shows to have some wrestling matches, and all of these wrestling matches had stakes as well. They weren't just thrown together, so they were really, really progressing the storyline. I I was particularly impressed by the main event between Randy Orton and AJ Styles. I think Randy Orton had a he had a moment with a young man in the crowd who was holding up a sign that he autographed. He wasn't even looking as he signed it, but I noticed that the young man had AJ Styles' gloves on, so he gave him a bit of a look when he went to sign it, and I was reminded, if I can give a bit of a niche reference. Do you remember Dimitri Sotiris Kyriakos when he visited and played a couple of guest matches for Sydney Olympic in Australia?
This is a very deep dive, Thanasif.
One of the kids, so Sotiris Kyriakos was a legend for Panathinaikos and for AEK, but one of the kids came with an Olympiakos scarf and wanted an autograph. He signed it, but I think that, you know, there was probably a part of him inside that hurt to do so, and I think a part of Randy Orton hurt to sign an autograph for AJ Styles. He was probably thinking, man, I should not be a baby face. I should be a heel to the max. But it was really getting into the babyface stuff. A really nice little television match between these two, Randy especially. Like, he really got into the back suplex onto the commentary table, which has become a staple of his since I think circa 2017. I think he delivered like three or four of them on this occasion. So I want to, like, I'm keen for where this heads, because I think he's going up against Carmelo either in the second round or in the semis. And I think that is going to be a very, very tasty little contest.
Well, the thing I was gonna add on to that is my a question to you, which is which wrestler on the SmackDown side do you actually want to see go the distance, or at least go all the way to the King and Queen of the Ring event
I
representing
th-
SmackDown?
I think they've booked themselves into a corner here, because I think that ideally they should have had one person who was a standout candidate, like on Raw where it was Gunther. But I think on SmackDown they've got a couple of people that would make sense to go up against Gunther. And I'm thinking Carmelo Hayes would be a good shout. In a way, I can say LA Knight, but I don't think he should be losing. And I think putting him in the final of the King of the Ring makes him need to lose. Likewise, they've put Tama Tonga in there. Yes, it's good to showcase his abilities, but the thing is, it can't be a heel versus heel contest against Gunter. So I think they've actually um, done some misbooking on the SmackDown side of things. I would have had some other people involved in the tournament, but the same way they protected Bron Breakker, they should have protected a couple guys that are in the bracket anyway. Who are you thinking for the SmackDown finalists?
I would love to see a guy like Carmelo Hayes make it, but the more and more I think about what this event's going to be, which is it's going to be in Saudi Arabia. It's going to be an event that it feels like to make Gunter look good. And when I think about those things together, it makes me imagine that a star like Randy Orton might be the way to go because he does not need the King of the Ring win. He doesn't need that accolade, but Gunther beating Randy Orton in Saudi Arabia, who will cheer Randy because they know who he is. I think that might be the best way to go to fulfill everyone's uh position. So it doesn't because I feel like a guy like Carmelo Hayes or LA Knight, they could really do with a big win. Definitely more so LA Knight. So putting him in that position might be it might be more harmful than helpful. So yeah, that's the more I think about it, the more I think maybe Randy's the way to go.
Is it also harmful though for someone in LA Knight's position? And there's no right way to go about this, but is it not also harmful for LA Knight to go out in the second round, probably getting squashed by Tama Tonga?
It is, but I feel there is a way they can do it that feels like LA Knight's been screwed rather than he's lost. Like you even look at what happened to Angelo Dawkins, like afterwards, like he lost the match and they still make it look as if the bloodline are just done, those damn heels. I think there is a way that they can do it. I'm curious to see how it unfolds. Likewise, on the Raw side of things, we saw a number of developments with the King and Queen of the Ring matches, and we saw Jay Uso beat Ilya Dragunov and Gunter beat Kofi Kingston from the men's. And then on the women's side, we saw Lyra Valkyria beat was it Zoe Stark, I believe, and Io Sky beat
Yeah.
Shayna Baszler. So we've seen some developments, and I believe that's now set up those matches for next week's Raw, which is going to be it's going to be Jey Uso versus Gunter, a rematch of only a month or two ago when they faced for the IC Championship, and then Lyra Valkyria versus Io Sky. I think I look at Raw and I feel like they've set it up perfectly because Lyra Valkyria, in my opinion, has done enough to show she can hang, and Io Sky gets that accolade. And Gunter Jey Uso, I think, is a very high profile match and feels like Gunter's going to progress there. So, what did you think of the Raw side of things?
I'll confess that I actually thought that Ilya Dragunov was going to be in the Raw final with Gunter in the tournament semi-final.
So did
I
I.
thought that that would have been a nice one. Maybe they're saving that for down the track. I mean, it is
Yeah,
a pay-per-view level, a pay-per-view caliber contest, so I think that aspect of it makes sense. But I did really think that that's where they were going to go. On the Raw side, I don't know about you, but I don't see either Io nor um, Lyra Valkyria being realistic queens of the ring. I think the queen of the ring is going to come from the SmackDown side
I agree.
of the bracket, and
Yeah.
a couple of candidates, to be quite honest. I'm thinking Tiffany Stratton, Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill to get the big bump early on in the run. What are your thoughts on the women's side of the bracket?
I think the SmackDown looks more enticing because I see characters there that could really utilize it. Like, especially a Tiffany Stratton, I think would be fantastic as a Queen of the Ring. You can only imagine. This woman's ego is already beyond the sky. Put a crown on top of that and just see what's going to happen. So I think there is a lot of potential there. And also, I like balance. And I feel like if one brand wins on one side, let the other win on the other.
As it
So
happened in the Royal Rumble.
exactly. So I do think that it will be on the SmackDown side. But that doesn't mean that from the Raw perspective they can't produce some good matches. And I think that's what I'm enjoying about it is I feel like Raw is actually producing some good matches that are worth watching, which is kind of consistent with the trend that Raw's been going through in a upward way ever since Triple H took over. But I feel like especially this year, it feels like it's not as much of a slog to watch Raw, which is a 3 hour show. It's still hard, but it doesn't feel anywhere near as boring. And I think that's something that is enjoyable.
I think because the ratio, and it was clearer last week, not so much on this week, but the the principle stands is that I think that last Raw had 8 matches on the card total. Usually they do 6, right? They did it because they were trying to do 4 and 4, or the 3 and 3, and then 2 additional from the King of the Ring and the Queen of the Ring tournaments. But I think that the more wrestling you put on, the better product it is for a 3 hour program, because you've got to hold the attention of people, and backstage segments are just like so easy to get people to change the channel.
Like you, yeah, absolutely. But there was another segment on Raw that I wanted to discuss that wasn't match related, but there was obviously a confrontation between Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre, and this has seemingly set up an immediate title match once Drew McIntyre is cleared. I have a couple questions to raise here firstly, Thanasi. One, what did you actually think of the confrontation? And two, now that it seems like this eventual match has been agreed upon, when is Drew actually going to be cleared? Are they going to save it for Clash at the Castle? Like, well, so I'll leave it to you.
I have a couple thoughts. One is, for a heel versus heel confrontation, these guys and the crowd were quite captivating. So points to them for, being able to hold it together. Essentially, like the correct formula here is that instead of, barraging on the crowd incessantly, the two people just barrage on each other incessantly and just do it in a mean way, right? So that's how you can make heel versus heel work. As far as the when this match is going to take place, I think that at least partially that Drew's injury may be kayfabe, or maybe they're exaggerating the extent of it so that they can push it out to Clash at the Castle. I think it's the logical place to do it, right? Like, and it's not the next pay-per-view, it's the pay-per-view after, so we're in close proximity. Damian Priest doesn't need to defend his title at Crown Jewel, or at King and Queen of the Ring, pardon me, because he already defended at Backlash, and he can have like a TV defense or something to make up for it. So having him go up against Drew McIntyre can be really, really strong. And if that happens, I don't see any other logical way of going about it than having Drew McIntyre go over. I'm hearing the rumors of like Punk is going to screw him out of it, for the second time in his home country. But I just feel like you've got to strike when the iron is hot. We gave Drew his moment at WrestleMania in front of a crowd when he had to do it in front of the pandemic the first time 4 years earlier. And then we took it away from him. We swept the rug from under his feet. I think that this time we actually have to give it like a real hard go and give him that British pop that would be unprecedented, frankly.
What are your thoughts on the idea that Damian Priest hasn't been given enough time yet? So that would feel like it's too soon to drop it. Because I feel like the one issue with Clash of the Castle being in June is that you kind of feel like it's the perfect place for Drew to finally get that big win and leave the evening also having on that high rather than being struck down by a cash in. But is it too soon? Because it's only been a couple of months by that point that Priest will have been champion.
The answer, yes, it is, right? So it would have to be a trade-off. Ideally, the best time for Drew would have been the same, to have Clash at the Castle be on the same date that Bash at Berlin is currently slated for, right? That post SummerSlam, because you can bring him back, give him a 2 pay-per-view angle with CM Punk, maybe have a screwy finish at the or whatever you would have had instead of Clash at the Castle in the June time slot. Have him go, maybe do something of Money in the Bank even as well. Like they can both be in it together and screw themselves out of it, and then go over at SummerSlam in the blow off of the rivalry, and then go on to defeat Damian Priest in Scotland at Clash at the Castle. That would have been ideal, and it also would have given Damian Priest a thoroughly long reign at the helm of Raw to make him that proper main eventer. But sometimes, like I said, sometimes you just got to strike while the iron is hot. That's my view.
Say Drew McIntyre does win at Clash at the Castle, which I believe is going to be in Glasgow, isn't it? In
It's
Scotland.
going to be in Scotland.
So this one's like a true home ground advantage for him,
Yeah.
not like last time when it was in Wales. But say Drew does win, does he feud immediately with CM Punk upon Punk's clearance to wrestle again? And is it for the title? Like in that situation?
I think, in fact, regardless of whether he's a champion or not coming out of Clash of the Castle, that it has to be a CM Punk feud because they've been building it so much and building it so well, also, right? Like, we're actually really keen for it. So, I don't see it going any other way because, like, come back. It's hot. It's ready. It's been set up. It makes a lot of sense. That's all there is to it.
I agree. My only reservation is I feel like CM Punk is at a stage in his career where he personally is not that bothered about being the world champion. And I wonder if his first real program in WWE, really, that he's gotten a chance to, sink his teeth into, if that immediately gets put into the title picture by virtue of timing and where the other stars are at, does that book him into a corner where they have to put the title on him and when he doesn't want that? Or likewise, on the other side, does it put it in a position where it feels like Drew needs to win or at least come out on top in that feud because Punk's in a position where he doesn't really need it, whereas Drew probably could do more for the company with it?
I agree with the latter. I think that a good program, because that being said, I mean, CM Punk has a lot of credibility. So Drew McIntyre having CM Punk as his first program as world champion, I think is makes things really strong for him. And I think that he should win the feud, right? I don't think CM Punk needs the title, at least not to be the one to take it off Drew McIntyre. We can see down the line, whatever, main event of WrestleMania 41, the future holds whatever. But I agree with that latter point. And I don't think it would be booking themselves into a corner to have CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. Oh, well, we have to put the title on Punk. Like, no, this isn't AEW where he's like the biggest star. Like, we've got someone that's on the verge of like superstardom, not just main event status. Like, Drew McIntyre is already a main eventer, but we're trying to make him a superstar.
Do you think there is any potential that if Drew does win it before Money in the Bank, that Punk actually manages to cost him a second time, again via a cash in, say attacking Drew McIntyre, and then the winner of the Money in the Bank ladder match actually cashes in on Drew again? Because can you just imagine, just from a character standpoint, how infuriating that would be for Drew and how much extra aggravation that would add into it?
The heat that would be on CM Punk for it, and because Money in the Bank is going to be in London, I believe, right? That's still Drew's home country. So if it happened on the same
I
night,
think this year it's in
no,
Canada.
you're right. It is in Canada this year.
I made that
Nevertheless,
mistake, but I mean, it's still hot crowd.
nevertheless, hot crowd. Um, or what I was going to say is that if it happened in his home country for the second time, then we'd be talking about riots. Like, it'd be a very dangerous thing to do. Uh, it's in Canada. Um, Potentially, you could have someone Canadian. I'm struggling to think who, maybe like a Sami Zayn
A
to
Sami
do
Zayn,
it.
Kevin Owens.
Kevin Owens potentially, but it probably just wouldn't feel quite right to cash in on the same night anyway. And it would be a little bit See, I'm wondering in my own head, would it be overkill because it's too much, or would it be overkill in the sense of you really want to hate CM Punk for doing it, and it's so hard for me to hate CM Punk. So I'm a bit conflicted on that point. You've got me there. You've stymied me.
Well, look, that's just a hypothetical, and the whole point of this is that first time in a long time, hypothesizing about what WWE might do is actually entertaining, and it doesn't make you lament what you're going to actually see because you know whatever you see, you can still enjoy it. I think in the years of Vince McMahon, people would fantasy book, come up with an actual better idea that wouldn't eventuate and would just make them sad. I feel like we're in a different phase of WWE fandom right now.
Yeah, you know what? Because I think Vince McMahon, I imagine, was very much of the ilk of we're going to swerve the audience. So sometimes like you mix it up last minute for the purpose of deliberately being unpredictable. But the thing is, sometimes predictability just makes sense.
Yeah,
And that's what Triple H is quite on the ball with.
I completely agree. And we'll see what happens. All right, well, Thanasi, let's move on to our final segment of this week's episode, and that is a King of the Ring quiz. King of the Ring is one of the more historic components of WWE, having famously contributed to the rises of several Hall of Famers. But how well have you been paying attention? In this video, we will test your knowledge on the subject with 10 King of the Ring related questions. My co-host Thanasi has graciously stepped into the ring to answer my questions, but please feel free to play along at home and let us know in the comments below how many questions you got correct. On that note, Thanasi, I only have one more thing left to say, and that is, are you ready?
Just do it.
All right, well, let's dive straight into question number one. Who was the first King of the Ring winner?
I was looking at the list last week, and I'm actually struggling to remember. But for some reason, even though Harley Race was the one that made the gimmick what it was, and I think he was second, I want to say The Rock, Don Morocco.
That is absolutely correct. Well done,
Yeah.
Thanasi.
See, I
Yeah,
swerved you there. I thought I was going to say The Rock, Rocky Johnson, but no.
he won it famously in 1985. So the tournament now is over, like it's approaching 40 years since it actually started. So
Yep.
long time. Question number two. Who is the only two-time King of the Ring winner?
This one I'm confident with. I know who it is. In fact, the surname I think had it 3 years in a row, the same family 3 years in a row, but I think it was 1991 and 1993. There was no 92 edition. So the two successive 91 and 93, it would be King Bret Hart.
Again, absolutely spot on. And after 93 and 94, obviously his younger brother Owen won it. So yes, you got it completely spot on. There's a bit of a dynasty going on there for a little while. Question number three. In what year was the first King of the Ring pay-per-view event?
Okay. Um, this one, I think I might not be able to get this one. So I know WrestleMania, the first WrestleMania was 1985. So SummerSlam followed, and then I think Survivor Series and the Royal Rumble also followed that. So King of the Ring would have been uh, at the earliest, I want to say 85, 86, let's say 1989.
Close, but definitely wrong. The answer was 1993. So the
Oh,
second time Bret Hart won it, that was the launch of the official King of the Ring pay-per-view event. On a similar theme, question number four. When was the last time WWE held a King of the Ring event on pay-per-view?
on pay-per-view, not like a network
Not
special.
a
Okay.
network special, on pay-per-view.
This is where the pay-per-view is named King of the Ring, not where they have the King of the Ring final on pay-per-view.
That's correct.
Okay. I do know the answer to this one. The answer is 2002.
You got it very quickly. So obviously this one is one that comes to the memory for you, isn't it? This is obviously the one that Brock Lesnar won as well, isn't it?
Mhm.
Within his rookie year on the.
And it was around the time of that sort of first Ruthless Aggression brand split. So it was a big five, but then they went towards like brand exclusive pay-per-views, and this was the one that, well, got the cut and it was discontinued, and we just started to refer to them as the big four from then on.
And the thing that I find remarkable is that 22 years have passed since then that it's been a pay-per-view event for WWE. It's a long time. Question number 5. Who won the last King of the Ring tournament?
The last King of the Ring tournament, I think, had a final. I think it was a final in Saudi Arabia, and it was, I believe, King Xavier Woods.
That is absolutely correct. He won it in 2021. So a couple years have passed since we've had the tournament. I'm frankly I'm glad to have it back, but it speaks volumes that this has not always been the most regular of things that WWE does, which will be in a question later on. But for question number 6, which year's King of the Ring event famously debuted the Austin 316 catchphrase?
Uh, this one I'm very, very confident with. It was so Austin became world champion in 1998, but 1997 was his golden year, and his big kickoff was actually the year before that to go into the golden year. So it's King of the Ring 1996.
Perfect working out, Thanasi. You nailed it on. All right, well, let's see if this one will stump you a little bit. Question number 7. There have been 21 winners of the King of the Ring tournament. How many WWE World Champions have been King of the Ring?
This one's so I think WWE World Champions, right?
WWE. So, for example, Harley Race was a world champion, but he never won it in a WWE World Championship. So
He's
I'm
yeah,
not counting him.
he was the example that I was going to allude to. Okay, so I'm confident that we've got Randy Savage, confident we've got Bret Hart. Um, this means that someone that has had both, right? Doesn't mean that they're world champion before or after. The
Just
timing's not relevant,
just
right?
both accolades.
Let me continue on. Booker T, Sheamus, Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, Edge, um, Ken Shamrock, Billy Gunn. They didn't have it, so I'm still at 7. Um, 2015, I think, was Wade Barrett or something, I want to say, and he didn't have it. Baron Corbin still isn't world champion. Um, I'm going to go with 8 and say that maybe I've missed someone. So I've counted 7, but I'm going to go with 8.
And I say you were very close. So the correct answer for official world champions is 9. If you want to
Mm,
count one unofficial, Ted DiBiase obviously famously had the championship handed to him, but
okay.
WWE
Yeah.
doesn't recognize that. So the answer I had down is 9, and you got many of them correct, but just to list through them very quickly because maybe I got it wrong. We've got Randy Savage, Bret Hart, Stone Cold Steve Austin,
Mm,
Triple H, Kurt Angle, Edge, Brock Lesnar, Booker T, and Sheamus.
how we literally spoke about Stone Cold Steve Austin a matter of moments ago. I can't believe I missed him on the list. And of course, Triple H. He won it in 1997. When I was, remember a few years ago, we were actually watching the 1997 Raw episodes, and that came up on his graphic every time. 1997 King of the Ring winner. Kicking myself.
It's all right. You're very close though. I mean, we're splitting hairs here. All right. Well, on to question number 8. Now, this one I'm prefacing by saying it's related to a pay-per-view, but not actually the tournament itself. and you'll understand because the question is, which famous Hell in a Cell match took place at a King of the Ring pay-per-view?
Oh, if I'm gonna get this correctly, this one happened. Well, the moment of the match happened on my birthday because of time zone differences. So it was June 28 in the United States, but it was probably in the morning of June 29, 1998, which is my birthday. So 1998 King of the Ring.
And which was the famous match?
That would be Mankind versus The Undertaker, where
You
he gets
gave me
thrown off the top of the cell.
you gave me more detail than I actually needed. So yeah, you aced it completely. Obviously this is an iconic match, iconic visual, and surprisingly, it took place at an event that isn't even like a big four or a big name one for WWE. So that's why I thought it was an interesting bit of trivia because you just wouldn't have thought that sort of match would take place and leave such a permanent legacy.
Well, back then it was a big five, right? It was those big five and then in your houses.
Question
But
number
we
nine.
digress. Go on.
Question number nine. Following its creation, which was the first year in which the King of the Ring tournament was missed? So obviously, if it's held in 85, 86, 87, which year was the first time that it didn't actually feature and there was a gap?
I want to say that it was actually the first year that Don Morocco had it was 1985. And I don't think it happened the immediate next year. So I'm going to say 86.
Well, Thanashe, it did happen the next year with Harley
Oh.
Race. And the first time it was missed was actually 1990.
Oh, so it was
So,
annual up until then.
so yeah, for I think, what is it, 5 years in a row they did it.
Oh.
And surprisingly, and I found this really cool, it missed a year before Brett won it, and then in between Brett's two wins, there was also a miss, and then after that, it had a complete run for I think 10 years again. So for a while, before Brett and after Brett was the
Hmm.
the gap. So he obviously was technically a King of the Ring for like an extra year or so. So yeah, interesting little tidbit there. And then finally, question 10. I alluded to it earlier. This is related to the long gaps that can happen with King of the Ring tournaments. What is the longest gap in years that has elapsed between King of the Ring tournaments?
I believe that would be between um I was about to say between 2002 and 2006, but I might be wrong. So let me keep thinking about it. I think there was another gap between 2006 and maybe 2009 or 10 that still gets us to. No, I'm going to say that the longest gap, because I'm pretty sure there was a 2010 tournament. I think that was the one that Sheamus won. And I don't think it happened again in 2015. So I'm going to say 5 years.
You aced it and you got the additions correct as well. There was no tournament in between 2010s and 2015s. And I just, so you got that correct, but also just an extra fact I wanted to mention is three successive King of the Ring winners were British. We had William Regal in 2008. The next time Sheamus won in 2010. And then in 2015, it was Wade Barrett. So, and I just want to add onto
Well,
that.
that's British Isles because Ireland is not part of the UK.
Okay, I'll give you that. But for a long time, but from 2008 until 2019, when Baron Corbin won it, there was no American representation of King of the Ring, and like a very, like it was very formal because obviously the Brits have the monarchy still. So I thought, it's just a nice little thing. But honestly, that is indicative of how much Vince McMahon turned sour on the King of the Ring format. He seemed to just wheel it out whenever he really wanted to. Hopefully, with this upcoming pay-per-view, it sort of starts the tradition again. I think that would be nice. But That's not what we want to talk about. What we want to talk about is your result. You got 7 out of 10, correct?
Okay, not too bad.
Which I think is quite commendable. Let us know in the comments below if you got better than 7 and which questions, if any, stumped you. Let us know down in the comments below. Well, Thanasi, that brings us to the end of this week's edition of the Audible Finish. Next week, we will be previewing WWE's King and Queen of the Ring event, as well as AEW Double or Nothing. So there's going to be a lot of wrestling coming up in the next little while. Are you excited for it?
I'm so keen that that weekend in the world of sport is going to be insane because we're going to have King and Queen of the Ring, we're going to have Double or Nothing, but also in the football world, got the A-League final, the FA Cup final, Scottish Cup final, Greek Cup final. What else have we got? The Euro League Final Four in Berlin, Germany. It's going to be an insane. Oh, even Roland Garros is going to start that weekend. So the world is going to be enamored.
We're going to be
Really keen.
spoiled for choice. Thanasi, great to have your company as always.
Peace be with you. Thank you very much.
And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Until next time, we hope everything you do is just too sweet.